What's up, future metal death dealers? Welcome back. Death of the Fingers. We're getting into extreme metal level 1 for the Rhythm Retribution series. We look at rhythm guitar concepts. And of course, when you listen to the backing track, you might be like, okay, that's not exactly what I would consider level 1. But it is essentially because it's simple melodies on one string. You have some light interval work. We're not doing anything too over the top as far as the picking is concerned, right? We're using power chords and other simple intervals. So, I mean, essentially the music concepts are pretty low level. But yes, to get it to a level where you can just play it like that, if you're not already comfortable doing that, takes a little bit of practice. So I'm going to go through the songwriting process. I'm going to show you the various techniques because really what I would hope is that you would just adapt over the backing track, if you will, to your own. And of course, remember, just sitting down and doing this process of just coming up with some simple drum lines and then just laying some guitars and some bass over top of it can be an amazing practice session in and of itself, because working on your songwriting skills is going to be absolutely essential. So, no more chit chat. That's enough for the introduction. Let's get in to the intro riff. All right, sexy. So essentially for the intro riff, the first thing you might notice is that I sort of start the guitar part even before the drums come in. And the reason is it sort of gives it this creepy off-time feel. And so it can be a real useful sort of songwriting technique to keep in the back of your mind. If you just start randomly with an instrument, it kind of just... it takes people off guard, I guess, a little bit, so it can be very useful. But as far as the musical ideas involved, I'm starting here on this A power chord on the low E string, right? Just straight up 7 or 5 and 7, right? And then I do okay, that's either the minor 6th interval or the augmented 5th interval. In this case, A augmented 5th or A minor 6th. Not A minor 6, A minor 6th. Okay, because I'm diminishing this major to the minor 6th. Or I'm taking the power chord and augmenting it, okay? So that could be the perfect 5th, augmented 5th, major 6th, or major 6th, minor 6th, and a perfect 5th. Okay, now that's going to be kind of important later on, but that's basically what I'm doing. So essentially I'm starting here, and all I wanted to do was just create a jumping off point to go to the next lick. In this case, another interval, in this case a major 6th, but again, it destabilizes this intro. See, now it creates the desire to move. Now that's F6, right? F major 6, F minor 6. And that's how I like to think about it. If I'm starting in the power chord here and I'm moving up, then I see that as an augmented 5th. But if I'm starting from this 6th and I diminish it, I see it as the minor 6th. Okay, so that might help. Maybe it doesn't. Again, creating the tension to go to the first riff, which is going to be in D, right? So by having this F diminished here, and moving to the D, and that's important because if you notice that the F here, the D is the 5 chord. So that is a perfect chord to jump to because a lot of musical theory reasons that I'm not going to get into, but the 5 of the one that you're in, so in essence, I'm playing this F5. As soon as I sort of augment it like that to create the tension, it sort of pulls towards this D, right? Musically speaking in layman's terms. So that's a great way of also sort of seeing how to create movement in the chords so that they have a logical conclusion. This one sounds normal to go to this one, which sounds nice to go to here. This one I'm destabilizing, and then I have to resolve. Okay, so that's some basic songwriting theory there for you. Essentially, you want to sort of string your chords along and then just, you know, apply whatever rhythmic structure is necessary to make it work. You know, if it was something else, it was like... So, I mean, it doesn't really matter if it was my intro or anything else, okay? So A, to A augmented fifth, F major sixth, F minor sixth, and then of course the first opening chord of the first riff is going to be the D. Let's get into it. All right, for the first section, I just want to show you like this cool sort of like heavy lick idea using basically the open position. Now I'm doing it in the B position here with the open B as my pedal tone, but you could do the same lick with the open E or with the open A. It doesn't matter. Or you could just completely change it around. Remember, I would probably just take these variations and just sort of mess with them in your own way with some of the drum tracks that you can get on YouTube and stuff like that. So just start off slow and start working on just the basic skill of just sort of getting through them with a decent amount of timing, right? But of course, you got to kind of know what to play first, right? So I'm starting here, of course, with this D5, of course, in the low B position. Now what I do is this sequence, which is open, 2, 3, to the second fret on the E string. Then I move back to this third fret on the B string, and then I play the tritone. Okay, so that's how that works. And that's going to give you that sort of cool, sort of off-kilter feel. Plus, this tritone here is going to be integral for creating that evil atmosphere, if you will. Now, listen, I do another series of, again, gallops, if you will, this alternate picking where I'm doing the sort of, you know, the little mini gallops, if you will. Notice how I get that every time. D here, or sorry, C. I'm moving up here to F, down to the C sharp. Right, so that's basically the entire lick. Now, of course, what you're supposed to do is just get it down first, right? This. Don't worry about trying to get it up to speed, if you will, with the music or whatever else. And remember, with the backing track, of course, you can, if you have a 7-string, sorry. It is what it is, lads. If, you know, you can sort of mess with it, you know, you're going to It doesn't have to be the same sort of pattern that I was using, but that's essentially it. Again, sort of think of it as like this. Right, what was that scale? Right, that should have been B minor, right? Which is the B Aeolian position. And so I'm just using those, and I'm adding in this tritone from this one here, which actually happens in the Aeolian position. Right there, right? There's also, we need to get this in. I could have used that minor third there as the sort of alternate note, but I was like, I get to go backwards and then I get to go forwards with the practice exercise, so that made more sense to me. Of course, get the galloping and then get those big, fat, juicy, controlled power chords. Then you want to control the string noise while you're doing this. You don't want to, like later on you can work on it, obviously, or if you're just working up to getting to better with the muting technique, start with it wide open like that. But of course you want to get that. There's subtle sort of like control of the muting where you got to lift up and put your hand back down so that the string rings out a little bit more, but also doesn't get to the point where it's just flying wide open, right? So. Right, I might be going. Which of course sets this half step up to go right back into the lick again. Do it twice. Done. Next section. All right, for the third section, essentially we're getting into the creepy sort of like open chord stuff that you hear all the time, Opeth, you know, or various sort of black metal bands to create some pretty crazy atmospheres. This is incredibly low level, say decibel omega or whatever else. So essentially, since I was starting in this low D here, why not just jump down this half step? Of course, you might be noticing a pattern there with me moving a half step all the time. Especially in metal, when you want to create sort of darker, more dissonant and evil music, it really helps to sort of do these half-step increments and just build new licks around it, so I'll leave it up to you. So I jump down here to this C sharp, right, and then I just snuck that interval in, right? See, that's just part of the scale. Because I would open up this high string for me to actually pluck to create the dissonance. Now I do the hammer on with the first finger on. Now that's on the A string. This one here's the second fret on the D string. It's not like it really matters. You can just do any chord you want there for your own version. But you might be noticing I'm playing the notes out of sequence. First of all, it's not like I'm playing them one right after another. And then I also sort of like pause between it to create this cool sort of arpeggiation effect. Obviously into this low B. Then I jump up here to this, I guess you could say, D sharp. And then I jump down to the C here. And then I'm just going to do the half step again. Then I go from the low B to resolve to this D. Now you'll notice there's a call and answer kind of thing. When I do it the first time, I use these weird sort of minor intervals to sort of keep the listener engaged until I get to the end, when I do this more solid resolution again to close the idea out. Don't leave your ideas open-ended. You'll see, and many times in this song sort of expose or whatever you want to call it, that I do something slightly different between the first iteration and the second, and that's an important sort of thing to do because essentially it helps set up the next part. And even though most people will not even notice it, it does make a difference because it's a subtle change that the brain recognizes. They just don't constantly or consciously sort of recognize, but it still makes a difference because if you hear the same thing continuously, the brain starts to go to sleep. They're like, oh, that's exactly the same. I'll just skip right over that. Remember it, right? So again, nice, not like that. Doesn't get any more evil than that. One more time, slowly. Slightly dissimilar licks. One is much more sort of atonal. And then the next one basically closes the idea out, keeping it, a lot more simplistic and melodic. Great tip. Section 4, let's do it. All right, section 4 is essentially broken up into like section A and section B. One is more like this idea of getting the grindy sort of feel where you're using like the halftime on the guitar. And they're doing the blast beats on the drums. And then the second half, of course, is when you start to just unleash and do the tremolo picking. So we're going to look at the first part, of course. And again, this is your standard sort of thrash type idea. So the note selection itself is, again, based around the B minor scale here, right? So it's always the same. And you could do the same on the E and of course on the A again. So it's up to you to just sort of adapt over to whatever, the instrument ranges you have. But the thing here is, of course, is that it's what we're doing, playing the power chords, not really that hard. Even the sequence itself is not that hard, but doing it up to speed and doing it, relatively cleanly is the difficult part, right? So again, we're not really breaking the bank as far as the musical ideas, but it's definitely difficult and challenging to play technically. So what I do is, all right, so I'm starting in this G to the D, and then C sharp and to the B, right? Now in this case, I'm moving from the D to the D sharp to this G sharp, G. I do that 3 times in a row. Essentially for the very last time, what I do is the same pattern, 3 of these in a row. Again, instead of doing this, I do the down one again and sliding in that. Now, of course, you want to try to get it so it's muted. Now, you might be noticing on some of the times I'm playing the D here, or this low B string, I should say, this D chord, I'm playing the full 3 notes, right? Because to me, it sounds a little fuller, but when I'm doing the A string or the E string here, in your case, this will be the A, I'm only using 1 and 4, right? Only two fingers, because it's just a little easier for me to transition. Now, in most cases, I'm not even hitting this big monster open chord, right? I'm just doing this straight out, right? Right, so just get used to practicing that and you'll get much better. And of course, you can kind of see there's some muting involved there. There's getting the fingers around. There's getting that sequence, and it's actually a little trickier than you would think. I know when I did it at first, and I'm talking at the same time, I can't even do it when I'm talking, really. But I remember when I was doing it during the recording session, I was like, oh, this is a little bit more tricky than I thought. So remember, just start off slowly, maybe if you're just doing the chords. You don't have to do the more technical aspects. You can dumb it down significantly. It still sounds great. Okay, let's look at the second part of the section number 4. All right, for the second part of, or part B, if you will, of the 4th section, essentially I just do your standard sort of alternate picking, you know, tremolo thing. Let's just look at the notes I used. Essentially what I did was just choose a parent scale, if you will. And in this case, it was going to be the Phrygian mode here. So, right, that's basically 3 to 4, 4 to 5, whole step, 5 to 6, whole step, 6 to 7, whole step, 7 to 1, whole step, 1 to 2 is a whole step, 2 to 3 is a whole step, right? And I'm back to the start now. So that's how I knew it was Phrygian, right? And then what I was just doing is just... Now, you might be wondering, like, oh, you didn't really tell me what the notes are, the frets are. Don't. That's exactly why I didn't. I want you to play that with me again. Let's look at the first section, right where I go. Okay, I'm starting on the B here. That's the first section. That's the first phrase. Then I want to do, again, using the call and answer principle, I want to do the other one that's going to, you know, sort of accompany me or complete it and accompany it. Wow, I'm going to try to get that out again. So instead of doing the sort of like, I thought I'd get ascend just using this Phrygian position. Right, and then the last sort of ingredient is just a sort of... You gotta relax, right? Now, the hidden sauce, of course, is when I took that melody line and I basically then applied it in thirds. Right, so... Right? And you're like, yeah, whatever, buddy, get out of here. But you'll get there too, right? It's just, you got to see it and you'll hear it eventually and all the rest of the stuff. But that was all I did. I just took the exact same original melody line and applied the basic music principle of thirds to come up with the Iron Maiden-y, super shreddy alternate picking tremolo lick you hear at the end of that section. So, section 5, baby. Let's do this. All right, I'll let you worry about getting this stuff up to speed with respect to the backing track. I'm just going to break it down very simply into the riff components, okay? The first thing I do is open up with this B on the E string, right? Okay, this 7th fret on the low E string, right? Just standard power chord. Because I'm moving to this open B, right? I'm going to jump into this C sharp minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio, just play 2 notes per string, right? Now listen, I'm only doing 2 strings here, but essentially that principle there of just using this minor third interval and incrementing by 1 fret each time until, of course, you get to the G and the B string where you got to jump up by 2 to maintain the tuning and all the rest of that stuff, right, is going to be absolutely essential, right? But I want to, like, might as well kick it up and make it a little bit more difficult. So after I do the first one, Want to get that sort of like evil again. What's that? Another tritone, right? The B to the F there. That's just absolutely ranché. It's great. So that's why I'm sort of always try to factor that in again. You might be noticing sort of like a pattern emerging here with respect to sort of like the extreme metal stuff is using a lot of these tritones, half steps, sort of atonal chord positions and movements, you know, that don't really make sense. And of course, we're going to look at messing with the timing next. So that's basically it, right? I'm starting off here with this B. Instead of going to maybe the G again, I just was like, make it worse. Jump back up to this B again. Right, which is going to get you to do that jump very quickly. That's going to be tricky. And then try to work up to get it to the speed of whatever it is at the backing track, right? The last little part, of course, is just me doing this B to the D, and then again, another tritone, the G sharp, right? If you were doing it another way, like with this E, same diff, right? If you were starting here. It's going to be tricky, but I know you can do it. Let's do the next section now. All right, for section 6 here, we're basically rocking your straight up catatonia. Essentially, on the one side, the left guitar, the right guitar, I can't remember whichever. I mean, just the one guitar, left guitar. I'm just basically playing this A to this E down to the C sharp again. Now, the tricky part is figuring out the timing. I'm not going to tell you, but see if you can actually figure out what that is. Now, I used a really messed up drum beat there to try to illustrate that when you do these weird sort of like looping chord progressions, it can sound very, very cool and out there, right? So again, I'm busy... And I sit on that, of course, and then finally moving to this low B again. Now, for the other one, what I wanted to do is of course, start to... Again, instead of doing the idea of a harmony with respect to the melody, now I wanted to harmonize with these power chords. So of course I jumped in onto this C sharp augmented chord, jumping up to the D sharp augmented. And essentially I jumped down here to this G sharp 6 chord. So this first one goes over the A. I won't do that actually, right? Then over this one, I basically did the E chord here. I did this next one. And then finally when I jumped down to this D sharp here, C sharp I should say, I jumped down. And of course when I move to the B, I'm just gonna basically, of course, do a whole step down. So I'm doing the F sharp 6. I know that's, it's pretty interesting. All I did was actually trial by error. So, I mean, if you're thinking about it, there it is. So the first side is... And the second is... Piece of cake. Section 7, let's do it. All right, beauties, for the last section, essentially I'm reprising the section previous to it, but now I'm doing it with the tremolo picking again. You can see me sort of developing the same idea to make it slightly different and then increase the complexity a little bit to make it sound that much more interesting. Plus, you get twice the mileage out of the same sort of riffage. So don't be afraid to sort of recycle an idea, but make a few subtle changes to the technique and the arrangement of notes here. So essentially, I'm starting off with this B, jumping down to the E. And then I get into this C sharp. Sorry, I was going to say D flat, but I should say C sharp like I've been saying previous, right? And then I'm jumping up to the F and then the G. Again, this major third here in this tritone, right? Okay? Right, so again... Right, so there it is. When I do it a second time, of course, we want to essentially reuse the same idea, but make one small subtle change. That way the brain doesn't go to sleep. So instead of jumping down to this E, I'm going to jump down now to the D here. So I get, again, that half step, which just, again, amps up the evil factor, if you will. With respect to how this music is supposed to sound, if I was doing it properly, I should have added in some keyboards and a bit more reverb over top of the rhythm guitars to really make it over the top. But I was like, we might as well just keep it nice and dry so people can hear exactly what I'm doing, right? So, of course, the first one. Second one. And then you're just basically doing it twice. I did it that way so that you could really get a good workout, but not make it so grueling that you'd be like, okay, I could potentially hurt myself. Remember, it's all about just trying to relax and sort of approach the technique intelligently. Don't try to push yourself too far, too fast. Just generally work up to it. And some essential sort of tips are concentrate more on the technique of getting the transitions down. More so, and just keeping the sort of, instead of worrying about how fast you can go. It's about the consistency that's going to be more important. And trust me, by level 2, when we start doing full chords like that, it starts getting a lot more challenging. I don't know. What'd you think? Kind of blistered through it, but there it is. I ain't holding your hand. If you want to be in the metal world, suck it up, buttercup. Smash the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Drop a comment if you want, and see you in the next one.